Hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Bolen. I'm the pastor at Midway United Methodist Church. I'm also a pastor at Edgewater United Methodist Church. I want to thank you so much for taking some time and for watching this video. This particular video that I'm going to offer is one that it's a sermon that I'm going to offer on Sunday morning to the people at Edgewater and also the people at Midway. But it's a sermon for the second Sunday of Advent. If Advent's something that you're not all that familiar with, Advent is a time that we recognize in the church when we prepare our hearts and our lives to receive Jesus Christ into our lives and also to receive Jesus Christ into our world. We offer some special readings. We offer some candle lighting. So if you're at all interested in being a part of coming together in worship, we are meeting in person for worship at 9:20 a.m. at Edgewater United Methodist Church, also at 10:45 a.m. at Midway United Methodist Church. I'd love to have you come and be a part of either one of those services. But these are the notes that I'm going to be using this upcoming Sunday for the second Sunday of Advent. And so I'll tell you that as I'm posting this video is that I'm going to this weekend I'm going to come into a story of Advent that is really not time. I mean, this is not the right time for this particular story, and it's a story of Christmas. It's a story of the wise men. Maybe you have wise men that are part of your they're a part of your nativity set, and maybe you do this. Maybe you hold the wise men because you know that tradition, you know the history of the wise men, that they were not, it was later when they came to the manger, so you keep yours until January. That's really the time that the wise men come. That's the time that the wise men appear, is for us January 6th. But I am going to be offering a sermon, and I'm inviting you to consider the wise men, even this time, even as this time of preparation, this time of getting ready to receive Jesus Christ into our world. Because you know from the wise men, and the reason we celebrate January 6, 2022 is going to be the day that we celebrate together as a church, and not just the United Methodist Church, but many traditions, churches around the world that celebrate Epiphany Sunday and celebrate the wise men coming and arriving at the birth of Jesus. But the reason that I'm inviting you to consider this is that in this particular season of life that we find ourselves in this particular place that all of us find ourselves in right now, I believe that the wise men can really help us, can really encourage us to take a look at their journey. And it really, in fact, it is a journey. And I think that one of the things that can really begin to change our lives is when we pay attention to journeys and think about our own paths and think about our own journeys. And so the journey of the wise men, particularly this year, that if you read it closely, and I know it's been true for me, but if you read it closely and if you begin to compare it to your own spiritual journeys, that it will be able to transform your own paths toward receiving Jesus once again into your heart and into your world. And I know that it has really done a lot of that for me. And so I encourage you, if you want to take a look at it, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 12 has the journey of the wise men. That's where all my notes come from. That's what we're going to read together this upcoming Sunday and worship together. But I encourage you, take a look at it, Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 through 12. But I want you to think about this. Because the wise men, are these wise men who chase a star. They chase a star, and that star leads them to Bethlehem, leads them to where Jesus Christ has been born. But I wonder about you. When is the last time? When is the last time that you were out in complete darkness? That you were outside? That it wasn't just a building that was covered in complete darkness? And I mean, how scary and frightening can that be? When all of a sudden we get so used to electricity and all of a sudden the lights go off. But there's something magical about going outside, and especially this time of the year, especially when it gets to be a crystal clear. I'm looking out my own window, and there's clouds right now, but especially when it gets to be crystal clear, and when the cold air moves in, the air becomes a little bit thinner. I mean, it's just extraordinary to go outside and to look into the night sky. So when's the last time that you were out in complete darkness? I mean, as much as you can get, depends on where you're at as far as lights and everything like that. But complete darkness. And when's the last time that you observed a star in the east? Or any other sight, or any other light that is in the night sky, and you became just completely overwhelmed by what you saw? I remember one time for me, and it was the most overwhelming that I had, and it's still one of those places that rises to the top. I've had more recent experiences, but one particular place, in particular, when I was in middle school. It's been a long time since I've been in middle school, but when I was in middle school, I got permission from my parents to stay outside most of the night, not the entire night. I couldn't get that, but to stay outside in my front yard, outside most of the night, to look at the Perseus meteor shower. And I was with my friend who was across the street, so we got permission to. I was actually spending the night at my house, so my parents kind of were able to rule there. But we could see both our houses from across the street, so we were outside getting ready to observe this meteor shower. And I will tell you, we were in lounge chairs, we were looking up, we had blankets on us, although it was like around August, and so it wasn't all that cold, but it starts to get cool at night, so we had these blankets that were around us like that, and we were looking up, and it couldn't come fast enough. It was boring. We didn't see anything until that first one. And then it was just a glimpse. It was a glimpse of a shooting star. It was a glimpse of a meteor. It's something that both Brian and I had never seen before. And so we started off in that way of saying, did you see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? And we just thought it just out of the corner of our eyes. But then over and over again, these meteors started coming. And then they got in a rapid succession. It was one right after the other. And then there was one, and this is the part that was so overwhelming to me, that there was one that just left us speechless. It wasn't that we had to say, did you see it? Because it lit up the sky so bright. And we being middle school kids that were in the front yard watching a meteor shower, we knew that this had to be the one, that it was so bright and it looked so big from where we are. We knew that certainly it had to have crashed into the earth. We knew that there was no way that it could have been burned up in the Earth's atmosphere, that certainly that one did. It had an impact, and we had to find that impact crater. We knew that one certainly that it had crashed into the earth. And I will tell you that sharing our newly discovered wisdom very early in the morning when my parents were on their way to work, in the middle of the night, in fact, before they got ready for work, they were not impressed. They were not so impressed with this enormous amount of wisdom about this falling star that had certainly crashed in the earth, and we had to make our life's journey and had to leave everything behind so that we could find where that crater was. They were not taken by our wisdom. They were not at all impressed by our wisdom. But have you ever noticed how much and how often that we are told not to chase too many stars, especially as we grow up? Now, chasing stars, that's one thing that kids can do. It's especially one thing that middle school kids can do when they're outside all night and they don't have to go to work the next day. But especially as we grow up, do you know that? Have you witnessed even the subtle kind of ways that most of the time that we're praised for being wise and discerning, and we're praised for those moments when we can focus and we can have this kind of diligence where we don't chase too many stars? And I wonder why that is. In our preparation for Christmas, we encounter year after year these three wise men from the east who chase a star when it rises in the night sky, and they become around the world. They become people who are known as wise men. Imagine that designation that these men have as being wise men are men who in the middle of the night see a star rise up and they begin to chase that star, and the rest of the world for more than 2,000 years later will remember these men as very wise men who were full of wisdom. Now, there's a lot of mystery that is surrounding these three wise men. Were they Persian? Were they kings? Were there only three? Was there an entourage that was with them? Was it only them that were there? Matthew makes it clear that they are wise and they are discerning men who, led by an overwhelming experience in the night sky, knew there was nothing to stop them from chasing this star. That's what Matthew gives us. They knew without a doubt that because this star had risen in the east, that a king had been born. Now, historically, for them, as well as around the Mediterranean world, first century world, historically, when kings are born, like Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, stars were observed. The rising of the stars at their birth, it was known. Yet for these three wise men, for this star that rises over Bethlehem, they didn't do what historically and traditionally happened. They did not just note the time and the date in their journals. They didn't just keep a record of it, but they chased that star. And they found themselves face to face with a king. And one of the interesting things about it is that when you find yourself chasing the stars and when you find yourself face to face with a king, as miraculous as the night sky can be, have you ever noticed this? As exciting as the journey of chasing the stars potentially has for all of us, we can still be bound by past experiences with what we consider to be reasonable guides. You see, that's what these three wise men did, is that they found themselves face to face with a king. Before King Herod, wise men from the east stand before his throne and they ask, and this is what Matthew records for us in the Gospel according to Matthew in the New Testament, where is the child who was born the King of the Jews? They ask the current king, because certainly he's going to know, certainly he's going to have some insight, but they say, tell us, where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? And as we all know, and as we have come to love, because we have not only the first 2 chapters of Matthew, but we have the rest of the Bible. And in fact, if you have not read all of Matthew, you have probably heard the story of the wise men. You probably know something about their encounter with King Herod. But as we all know, and as we have all come to love, Herod has no answer to where Jesus is. It's a fool's errand in a sense. He knows not where he's been. And I told you, remember, I told you, it's a little bit too early for this story. But Herod is bound to the earth. He's not been noticing stars. He's not been noticing what God has been doing in our world. With his kingdom, with the throne that Herod has, there's no place for chasing the stars. And I wonder about all of us. Is there still a little place that you can create in your life where you have room to chase the stars? There's no time to go and search diligently for a king. No time for King Herod to go and search diligently for what is happening beyond the pale of his administrative and noble duties required of all successful kings and all successful kingdoms. Yeah, there is time. There is time for the old king, the old kingdom, to be concerned about a possible threat to their own stability and legitimacy. So the king does what wise kings with royal experience do best. The king forms an alliance with the wise men. Again, this is where Matthew helps us so much. Matthew chapter 2, verse 8, we have King Herod's words that are spoken. Probably words that you know from Christmas. Go and search diligently. Imagine that. You go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage. And so what the king does is that, because the wise men and their preparations for the journey, who have observed this star that has risen, the king says, yes, let's form this alliance. You go and search everywhere, search diligently, to go to the far corners of the kingdom. It's my kingdom anyway, so go and search diligently for this child. And when you have found him, I want you to return to me. And give me the exact location. Give me the exact coordinates of where this child is so that I may go and pay him homage. Homage is a really interesting word. When's the last time that you offered to pay homage to someone? When's the last time that you even used the word homage? Homage is an interesting word. It is. You may know that first part, that Latin that comes from Homo sapiens, the human being. Homage is when a vassal, a human one, would declare himself to be the Lord's man. And so in a sense, this is what Herod is asking the wise men to bring him word to come back when you go and search diligently for this child. Come back to me so that I might become the Lord's man, the one that has been born, the king that is there that has been born. Bring me word so that I might pay him homage, so that I might worship him, so that I may say, you know what? I'm his man. I'm the one that is connected with Jesus who was born in Bethlehem. Now, Herod never worships. You may know this part of the story. Herod never goes out. Herod never offers worship. But the wise men also never bring word to Herod. Another extraordinary event, a warning comes, again at night, in the middle of the night, in a dream to the wise men, do not return to Herod's royal court. What does happen is Jesus is in fact paid homage. Jesus is in fact, as an infant, is paid worship. not by a king, but by the three men from the east who worship the child and present an infant. Imagine this. And present an infant who is born in a manger with three gifts of gold, of frankincense, and myrrh. Treasures that are fit for a king, and yet given to a child who is lying in a manger, who will one day receive the homage and adoration of the whole world. These three wise men, chasing a star in the night sky, become the very first to witness a new thing that God is doing in the world. And they become some of the first to worship Jesus as Son of God. And in this season of preparation, this season that we call Advent, of preparing for Christmas Day in our own lives and in our own world, I want to ask you again, what stars are you chasing? What stars are catching you off guard? As you know, without the stars, without the chase, the path that is leading us to Christmas Day, it's impossible to worship and adore, to pay homage in our own lives. You know this. That if we don't find something that captures our imagination, if there is not something that we are absolutely giving everything in our life to be caught up in and to chase, you know it's impossible to worship, to adore, to really pay homage and say, you know what? When Jesus Christ is once again celebrated in my life and in my world, it's real for me. And it's an extraordinary experience that I have. You see, chasing the stars is what creates excitement and room in our hearts for real worship. And real worship face to face with Jesus is where our lives can begin to truly change. You see, just like it was on that night a long time ago for me in middle school, that what started as just a faint glimpse in the corner of my eye and then became over and over and then resulted in this extraordinary encounter with a meteor that for certain, with the wisdom and the discernment and the knowledge that we had as middle school boys in our front yard, we knew that this one had to have been the one that had crashed on this earth. But it was that kind of excitement that led us to the chase. And that's what I'm talking about. What kind of excitement is leading you to Jesus? What kind of excitement is leading you this year to the child who was born in the manger? Now, I will tell you, my nighttime experience that happened so long ago in middle school has only added to me with my own children, wanting to share with them and inviting them and bringing them out to see those stars that are in the night sky. You see, we're told as children not to be afraid of the dark. But as spiritual people, as people who are seeking an encounter with a living God, and as people who are wanting to be drawn into God's presence, to be afraid of the dark, to not venture out, to not chase the stars, well, we do it at our own spiritual peril. You see, what the wise men remind us is that the journey of chasing stars, the journey that is leading us to worship Jesus as King, to worship Jesus as Savior, to worship Jesus as the child and the Son of God who has been born in our own world, to Jesus who has come, and Jesus who can now live in our own hearts and in our own souls, in our own very lives, transforming our minds, transforming and changing our very lives. You see, when we go out into the darkness, it's all about that place. In spite of how dark the sky may be, in spite of how dark our circumstances may be right now, chasing the stars, pursuing God's new thing is where we will discover God's presence. And so again, what stars are you chasing? What stars are you chasing in this second Sunday of Advent, the season of preparation for Christmas? Or in other words, what stars are you chasing that are leading you to Christmas Day? I'm not talking about last year's stars. I'm not talking about the stars that happened 5 years ago when you had such a wonderful Christmas. I'm talking about the star that is coming to you right now. And again, in spite of how dark the sky may look, in spite of how dark your circumstances may look right now, God is offering us again stars to chase. And the very question is going to be, What star are you chasing that is leading you to Jesus as Savior? I hope that this is extraordinarily helpful for you. I encourage you to chase the stars. Journey with the wise men. Create your own wise pathway to Jesus as a Savior. And may God's blessings be with all of you. And may your chasing of the stars, may they be filled with all the hope and the peace that God truly offers us in this season of Advent. Well, thank you so much for watching. Hope that all of you feel God's blessings as they surround you. Hope that this is a time that you are both healthy and safe. And it is my prayer for all of you that you are healthy and safe. Well, thanks again for watching.